Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special council meeting. I think we're getting ahead. We're going ahead, everyone. Sorry, if we can just get everyone's attention. Thank you. Good evening, and welcome to the special committee of the whole meeting for Monday, November 29th. I'd like to start off the meeting by doing our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Coast and Straits Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen peoples, known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and that their historic connections to these lands continue to this day. Again, welcome to the meeting. The mayor is away on holidays, so I am acting mayor tonight. And the first item on the agenda is our approval of agenda. Moved by Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor Appleton. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you so much. The next item is the adoption of the committee of the whole meeting, whole minutes from April 17th. Moved by Councillor Appleton, second by Councillor Patterson. Any additions or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Move on to the next item. But before I do that, I would just like to remind anybody who is looking to do a public comment in our question period that the phone number, if you're phoning in, the phone number is 1-855-703-8985. And if you just phone in now, then we'll be ready for you for the next item coming up. If you're on Zoom, you can just raise your hand in Zoom. If you're going to be phoning in, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 to raise your hand, and we'll be able to see that you're there. So the next item on the agenda is the mayor and council verbal reports. So I thought I'd just go around the table. If that's all right, I'll start with Councillor Patterson, I think.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and welcome back. Okay, so just start with on May 17th, I, as the representative of our district on the Capital Region Emergency System for Telecommunications, or CREST, we toured the ECOM headquarters in Salish and the new development site where the CREST building will be developed, hopefully started this year, and then a new monopole installation that is in View Royal. So we got to some first-hand looks at some of the work that has been completed over the last year, and then that was followed by the board and AGM all in one day, and the board approved the final amendments to the 2023 to 2027 financial and strategic plans, and the funding for the new CREST headquarters to be developed. And then on May 25th, I attended the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, where I serve as our council liaison. I also serve as the treasurer and serve on the Priorities and Grants Subcommittee. The Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee approved what we presented from Priorities and Grants. They approved the award of a grant request for Victoria Youth Empowerment Society, or YES. This group tends to like acronyms a lot, so it's a little different to learn all the jargon. But the grant that we have awarded to YES will be used towards the 2023 Summer Opportunities Program that facilitates a 9-week, 5-day, 4 hours a day activity and education program for marginalized youth age 13 to 18 in safe, supervised location downtown. And the Victoria Youth Empowerment Society has provided services for vulnerable youth and families and their caregivers throughout the CRD for 30 years now. So working with them is a real pleasure, and we were very, very pleased to support their request for this grant. Annually, YES supports over 1,000 youth and families in the region. And as chair of the Priorities Subcommittee on the reception that we are hosting on June 16th, I'm not sure how I got that task. However, we are planning a reception to bring together all of the resource agencies within the CRD who certainly became very disjointed during pandemic, many of the programs that they offered were discontinued pending COVID being over. And so we're looking forward to getting everybody back together and learning what activities are back up and running to serve youth and families in this area. And then May 25th, I, along with Councillors Braithwaite and Green and Smart, I attended the Parks and Recreation Volunteer Service Award dinner at the Monterey Center, and it was really wonderful. There were so many volunteers there, and they were recognized and received certificates and pins for 5 to 30 years of service to our community. So it was a real pleasure to attend that function also, and I know that there's many events coming up in the next couple of weeks also. So we'll look forward to hopefully seeing members of the community at those. That ends my remarks, Acting Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Smart.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's a really fun month, actually. I feel it always is, but I started off the month by attending the Jane's Walk of Bowker Creek and learned even more than I thought I knew everything, and I was just so thrilled to see so much going on from a native plant point of view and habitat. Also, I attended the Design Victoria Conference, the first of its kind, and I'm going to be back next year, and it was fantastic. I had the opportunity to speak on a panel discussion on the ethics of architecture and long-term design. And then the Arts Commission had its Arts Summit this month, and it was a wonderful opportunity. There was 100 arts champions there. Brainstorming about how we can make arts even more economically and culturally vibrant in our community. So I'm really excited. We're going to bring that back to our strategic planning session. And then, as already mentioned, the two great events just this past week, the fundraiser barbecue on the front lawn, and I was so touched at the turnout and the generosity of our residents. And then the Volunteer Service Award dinner at the Monterey Center. I'd had so many amazing conversations with, boy, that place just runs on volunteers. It's amazing. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor. I guess I'll report primarily on my activities with respect to the Greater Victoria Public Library Board. This is a significant month for the Library Board because the board participated in its annual retreat, which is done for the purposes of strategic planning. So we had a really excellent session. There's some very, very strong internal staff to the GVPL that facilitated a strategic planning discussion. Very well attended by most of the board, and council will be hearing more from me in this upcoming, maybe next sort of 6 to 8 months about the refreshed strategic planning process. Currently the GVPL is running on a 2-year strategic bridging plan, which comes to a conclusion in October, so the board will be making decisions about what the next steps are. So that was an important session. I chaired the regular board meeting on May the 23rd and was really pleased to attend this weekend. On Saturday was the Emerging Authors Collection launch, which is always a real treat to be a part of. So a bunch of emerging, independent, locally published authors have their books entered into the collection for the library to be circulated so that people can see them and get access to them. So that's a real highlight to be part of that. I gave some brief remarks there and met a bunch of authors and was duly impressed by everybody. I did meet one gentleman who was he said not bad for being 91. He was being published for the first time at 91. So just in case you think that you've done everything you have to do. And of course, I'm really pleased, as council will be aware, that the reopening of the Oak Bay branch is imminent, coming up here within the next week and change. So, little bit of a plastic timeline there, but we can say that we're in the home stretch with it. The pop-up Oak Bay branch has closed as of Sunday afternoon, so that the equipment that was being used at the pop-up can be moved back over to the main branch, and everything can be organized and ready for the main branch reopening. So that's my remarks. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And next we have Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Just a few things I am reporting out since the last time we were able to do this at a committee of the whole. So I was pleased to attend again the municipal partners meeting for the South Island Prosperity Partnership, which was unveiled their branding for Victoria Rising, which is this economic development strategy and identity, and some open source and share resources that will be available to the broader community, business, institutional, local governments to promote Greater Victoria from an economic development point of view. I was very impressed. They've been seeking input from municipal members of the partnership, as well as all the other members, and that's going on through the summer, and then there'll be an official launch of this in the fall. But I would say they've done an extremely good job so far. I was also pleased to attend, hoping for some secrets or tips, the Urban Development Institute's webinar lunch and with Minister Callan speaking. I was hoping to find out more about the municipalities that might be identified under the Housing Supply Act for particular responses with respect to housing targets, and he wouldn't say much, but he was pressed to say that at least one of the 10 would be a municipality on Vancouver Island. So we know that much. I was also pleased, speaking of volunteers, to participate in the Camas Day festivities, a huge outpouring of volunteer effort to engage the community around a whole bunch of environmental initiatives at Cattle Point. And then I also participated in a little friendly competition with some of my fellow councillors and the mayor in order to promote Go by Bike Week, which actually started today. I lost my car versus bike race against Councillor Smart, but it was all in good fun and to really endorse and support active transportation in the region. So that was fun. And finally, what would I say? That is probably enough. Great, thank you.
Thanks very much. And Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. On May 17th, I attended the Regional Water Supply Commission for the CRD, which was a really interesting commission. It's about safe water in our region, an extremely important issue. Sadly, I will miss the tour of the Soup Dam and the whole area, so my alternate, Councillor Patterson, will be going in my stead, and that's in June. May 23rd, I was acting mayor for that council meeting, at which time we honored the memory of Mr. Seekins and his family. And staff were incredibly supportive during that period. Thank you. May 24th, I attended with Councillor Patterson the BIA AGM and Social. Always a fun event. Our businesses do so much, and in fact, we're instrumental in the fundraising barbecue that was held that I attended on May the 25th, as many of us did, on the front lawn of the hall. A lot of that food was donated, I believe, by local businesses, so they were very supportive. And then finally, that evening on May the 25th, I attended with Councillors Braithwaite, Patterson, Smart, the Monterey Volunteer Dinner that everyone talks about. And the volunteers are truly amazing. There were awards for 5, 10, 15, and 20, and then 30 years. So there are people in our community who have been volunteering for more than 30 years at the Monterey Center, and they keep it humming. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks for everybody talking about the events that happened in the last week. I know that for myself, I'm just back after an extended period of time hiking out of the country, but I'm happy to be home. And I know that actually the BIA AGM is actually next week, I believe. I think it was the social that was last week. And I have a Parks, Rec and Culture meeting tomorrow. And then I just want to remind everyone that this weekend is the wonderful Oak Bay Tea Party. So I hope to see all of you down at the Oak Bay Tea Party. And that's, I think, the update on everybody's verbal reports. So I think we'll move on now to the public comment and question period. And just a reminder that if you do have a public comment, or if you're in the room, you can come up to the speaker's podium, just state your name, your municipality of residence. We would give you 3 minutes to speak on a subject that's not on the agenda tonight. And if you can address all comments through myself, that would be wonderful. So if there's anybody in this room who would like to speak during public, as long as it's not on an item that's on the agenda tonight. So if you're here to speak about the item number 6, yes, then that your opportunity will come up at that time. because that it would be subject to public input, okay? This is basically for things that are not on tonight's agenda. So is there anyone within the room who would like to speak that? And do we have anyone online, Ms. Leach? No? Okay. If someone does phone in to the number that's on the agenda, we will go back to them. But at this point in time, we will just move on to item 6.1, which is the Uplands Sewer Separation Humber Catchment Project. And we have Director Robertson, Director of Engineering and Public Works, who I believe will be speaking to that. Mr. Robertson.
Just working with the technology here. There we go. Right. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, this is an important milestone in this project that's been in the works for many years. And in my recent time here, we've been working with staff to bring it to this point, to let you know where the project's at and recommendations that we'd like some feedback and direction on tonight so that we know the next steps to take as we move this ahead to construction in the not too distant future. So with that, I will go through a slide presentation and then be open to comments as we go along. Well, either comments as we go along or we'll do them at the end, whichever you like. I'm fine to park it if there's something that comes up along the way.
So we can comment.
Actually, if you direct all questions to me, please, but it would not be questions from the audience. It'll be questions from council that we will do. So if you have a question, please just write it down and you can ask it at the public input portion. Thank you.
So the purpose of the project is to separate the sanitary sewer and the storm sewer and eliminate combined sewer overflows to the ocean and the burden that it puts on the environment and the downstream sewer treatment systems. Currently, the Uplands area has combined sewers that carries both. So we aim to be undoing that through this project and taking that load off the system, but also eliminating those discharges that happen from time to time during heavy rainfall events. So we want to protect the receiving waters, eliminate stormwater and groundwater from the sewer system that doesn't need to be treated and we currently pay to treat, and reduce the burden on the collection system for the CRD. So there are pump stations that are in line before it gets to the treatment plant, and then overall the fees that we pay for treatment, because we pay on the total amount that comes through those pipes, but we're only collecting on the sewer amount that we calculate. So there's an imbalance there for this area. So just to go quickly through some history, in the 1910s or thereabout, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when the system would have gone in, but this looks like a likely period. When the neighborhood was developed and the combined system was installed and it discharged directly to the ocean from nearby outfalls. Hard to say why that choice was made back in the day. Many municipalities did separated systems, whether it was convenience or funding at the time that was a less expensive option, but those are just guesses at this point. In the 1990s, the combined flow was directed into the CRD's new East Coast Interceptor, but in heavy rainfall, the system was overwhelmed and the combined sewer overflows, or I may revert to engineering speak and say CSOs, would occur at those heavy rainfall events. In the 2000s, the province and the CRD set goals for separation of the combined systems. And 2015, Oak Bay retained a consultant to prepare options for separation. And my understanding is prior to that, there was some preliminary work that was done with another consultant as well. And there was extensive public consultation during this period. In 2016, Council endorsed the option to install a new storm drain or storm sewer system with the existing combined system to become the sanitary sewer system. And in 2017, our consultant began preparation of the detailed plans for the Humber project, and there are preliminary plans for the Rutland project that were done as well. And in this first phase, the system will lead to 2 new outfalls at Humber and at Ripon. In 2022, in response to a direction from the Ministry of Environment, Council approved the initiation of the Uplands sewer separation project, and staff put together grant applications to assist with the costs of the project. And so since that time up to the present, staff have been actively engaged with our consultant in final design details, reports, and preparing tenders. And we are awaiting confirmation of the grant application that was submitted last year. I wish I had news that I could give you at this date, but I don't yet. The project area, phase 1, in the upper area there in the dash, above the dash line, is phase 1, which is referred to as the Humber project, and constitutes 152 properties. Phase 2 is below, is the Rutland area, which is 236 properties. And more detailed on phase 1 is 2 sub-catchment areas, which is Humber. Unfortunately, Humber is in Humber, so there may be some confusion there, but it's a sub-catchment area, which is the lower one in the picture there. And then the second sub-catchment is the Ripon sub-catchment, and they each have their own outfalls. Just a bit of a project overview for Humber is the 2 sub-catchments, as I've noted. The project will consist of new storm sewer mains on every street, which will include manholes, new catch basins. The existing ones are substandard. They don't have enough of a sump to settle out the runoff before discharging. And where we can, we'll put in side inlet hoods, which allow during, especially the fall, when there are leaves that can block the horizontal grates, it'll allow it to go in the side inlet hoods into the catch basins, and laterals to each property line, and the 2 outfalls. We'll also be connecting to properties that have separated their systems already or happen as the project goes along. Some properties have separated up to the property line and then have wide back into the sewer at that point because there was nowhere else for it to go. So we'll pick up those, and as we put in the lateral, the contractor will hook those up so they're live. And we'll be restoring curb and asphalt that's removed as part of construction. So there is not a plan at this point to be repaving the whole area, but just areas that need restoration, which there will be significant amounts. We also looked at related works as part of our asset management strategy approach. So we looked at other systems in the area, looking at the streetlights, in discussing with our electrical staff. The system's over 100 years old. The wiring is very brittle, so as they've had to deal with it over the years, it wasn't installed in conduit, which was the practice. That was the practice in the day. So it's not forgiving at all, and we'll be crossing it many times in doing the project, and so it can't be repaired as we'd be putting junction boxes everywhere, and the likelihood of actually being able to reconnect the wiring would be more than challenging. Also, staff noted that the poles are rusty, like on the inside, they've got 100 years of wear, and bolts are damaged. And the bases are also not to code. There's places where they've demonstrated that you can move it without an awful lot of force. So we came to the conclusion that because of the amount of work we're going to be doing and how old the system is, and it's what it's made up of, that we should be dealing with that at the same time, because we likely won't be able to repair it. So to prepare ahead of time, the fact that it needs to be done. We are going to be replacing some water mains. Each water main in these two areas has been modeled to confirm size, and we also looked at the history of breaks and leaks and material type of the mains that are in that area. And sanitary sewer, we've had CCTV viewing done of all the mains, and we'll be looking to do repairs where necessary. So why would we do this complete approach? Well, the neighborhood's 100 years old, which is pretty good for all this type of underground infrastructure. The integrity of the other infrastructure is what we were looking at, the safety of the electrical system. And when looking at benchmarking standards, these systems have exceeded their useful life expectation. We also want to minimize long-term and repeat disruptions that we finish this large project, which we're already going to be undertaking, and then we come in 10 years later to replace a water main. So we would like to undertake that, and also because the amount of crossing that we're going to be doing, it would be, we would likely be doing potential damage as we go along to things that we're crossing. Although, you know, care is taken not to do that, but with an old system, we may have issues. So we think in the long term that doing the work that needs to be done now, also economies of scale will come into play of having a contractor on site with crews, saving on mobilization and demobilization and contract admin for all these separate contracts as the years go on. And disruption to each street will be reduced over the long term. Although in the short term, it will be longer duration on each street because we're doing multiple things. The long term of having to come back in should be eliminated, and reducing incidental damage to other utilities. So on the streetlight network, there are 142 poles and bases that we'll need to replace. Replacing the bases, replacing the underground wiring, putting in conduit and proper junction boxes, and we'll be designing to similar lighting levels. So we aren't looking to turn up the volume on lighting, and we're not looking to put very different fixtures in place. We're not going to start putting Cobra head lights through Uplands. For water main replacement, Exeter was already in the books for 2023 due to the number of leaks there. So we already had the design ready to go, and so we pulled back on that to bring it into this contract. Norfolk is AC, asbestos cement pipe, and it also has lots of leaks, and due to its age, it tends to go spongy, which is a technical engineering term, and makes repairs and connections very difficult. And it is a bigger system that on some future date we'll come back and talk to you about district-wide. And on Ripon, the mains, after modeling, were found to be undersized and made worse because of the tuberculation in the mains, where we may have a 6-inch main, but because of the number of years it's been in use, we have growth on the inside, which is all safe, but it reduces the capacity. On the sanitary sewer, spot repairs is what we're looking at doing there. There's no upsizing required because the current mains carry the stormwater and the sewer, so when we eliminate one or start to eliminate one, the sizing is fine. But we want to make sure that any restrictions, any route entry that we'll do repairs on, so that after the project that we can go in and do lining. It's suitable for lining, which is a much less expensive and intrusive system, and it will help to reduce I&I, which is also identified in the core area liquid waste management plan from 2018. We've come up with some 5 fixtures that we've heard from our consultants of styles that are similar to what we have and some variations. So our recommendation will be to seek public input and also from the Heritage Committee or Commission on what the look might be out there. There's one that's a pretty close match, and then there's some that are variations on that. And these would all be LED fixtures, and we've also asked them to give us, our consultant to give us recommendations on dark sky compliant as well. So as far as the new storm drain main and the features of it, the design decisions that were made back in 2016 is that it won't be installed deep enough to achieve a gravity solution for all properties. I think sort of on average we're around, I believe, 3 meters deep. Some will be less. To achieve the gravity solution would have been 5 meters. And on the overall project, well, for the Humber area, that was estimated to cost an additional $3 million to go down to that depth, and $10 million overall for the whole project to go down to that depth. So the decision was made to use is to put in the storm drain main less deep to save those costs, reduce the blasting, but we do have the issues of it will require pumps on some properties. The road runoff into the catch basins will be a significant diversion from the sanitary sewer, because all that runoff from the road area goes immediately and very quickly into the system. And so by taking that part out right from the get-go, that's a huge impact on the overflows and on the load on the system. We would also be installing new laterals to each property, and our consultant had put that in their costing as part of the project cost. And because their thought on it, which makes sense, is that we wouldn't see ourselves coming back in multiple times down the road to now extend a lateral from the middle of the road to another property, but doing it all as we go. And the properties that have already been separated to the property line will be connected during construction as we go along. There'll be some lag in that until we accept a section, so manhole to manhole, we won't make anything live in there. But once we've accepted that section with a contractor, then we would make all those connections, hook up the catch basins, and then we go to the next section. And so there's approximately 35 properties in the Humber zone that are ready to be connected at this point, which is, I think, around 23%. The properties that aren't separated, there's approximately 50 that will not be able to connect by gravity, and they will require a sump pump. Some will only require the pump for foundation drains, as the rainwater leaders would be sufficient elevation to go by gravity. So it would make their pump solution a lot simpler in that they don't have to pump all the way to the property line. They would just have to pump up into their rainwater leader elevation. Other than the pump and the sump and electrical connections, properties would require the same separation that everybody else would have to do and connection to the property line. Pumps obviously will require ongoing maintenance and the cost to run when there's rainfall. Some properties may opt on their own to do the pump solution in that they have more options, more flexibility of going around trees, around other objects that may be on a property that they don't really want to dig up. So our consultants had looked at that may actually be an option that people choose to do in some cases. The benefits, some of these I've talked about already, the eliminating CSOs. Big one is that we meet provincial obligation to have this project done by the end of 2025. Reduces our handling costs for sewer and for treatment, and reducing capacity at the treatment plant. As development happens in the region, the capacity of the treatment plant will eventually become challenged, and so anything that is taken off of that by eliminating stormwater from any municipality will extend the life of that facility and the cost of adding to it. And the goal obviously is to encourage all properties to be separated and connected, and properties currently aren't obligated to do so unless they're building a new house or renovation over $100,000. It's a little far away to see, but this is just a pictorial of, on the left, the current situation where we have the tan-colored pipe, where we've got everything from catch basins to the connection, which is the rainwater leaders and everything going into it. And then future state, where it's separated, the catch basins are going into the blue pipe, and the connections are separated as well. This one shows what happened to the properties who have already separated. So you'll see here at the property line, there's a Y put in here where the new storm sewer was brought out and then was connected over to the sewer as a temporary measure, but anticipating that there would be a new service going in at some point. I'll talk a little bit later about the fact that there was, in the early period, we had those Ys installed on the private side, and then later that was switched to have them installed on the public side. So we have those, the inside ones to deal with, and we'll specifically talk about those. The target for construction is the fall or winter of 2023, and that will be based on council sign-off of the project, moving ahead, award of the tender, availability of contractor, and obviously materials, which prior to COVID wasn't an issue, but it's becoming less of an issue, but it's still, at times, there are certain things that are hard to get. The Humber sub-catchment, starting at the Humber outfall, will start first, and that whole sub-catchment will be done first, and then they'll switch over and do Ripon sub-catchment. And we're anticipating that all the works in Humber would be done, including the street lighting, the water mains that are in that area, so that we're complete when we move over. One other advantage of doing the multiple things at once is if we do end up being stalled on construction, for example, if we find an archaeological area that we have to stop for and undertake further examination, there gives us some options to move to work in a different area. And as I mentioned, the properties and catch basins will be connected manhole as we go manhole to manhole. It has been noted as being an archaeologically significant area, and our consultant had a sub-consultant working specifically on this, and an archaeological overview assessment has been conducted, and they've identified registered and historical sites. The Humber sub-catchment will be under a blanket heritage inspection permit that we already have, which was for the Exeter project.
That was the district's general heritage project permit that allows us to do work anywhere in the district, but we did specifically alert the heritage branch that we would be doing the Exeter water main, so we will be able to modify it to add the other streets in Humber subcatchment beyond Exeter.
And there will be an archaeological consultant working with First Nations and invite a representative to participate in field work. So this was all detailed by the sub-consultant in an extensive report that was done after 2017. On the communication side of things, prior to construction, there was significant public consultation during that first planning phase, 2015-2016, and during this, as we near construction, staff will inform and consult during the public engagement sessions that we're recommending, and provide objective information and seek feedback on the various parts of the project, and also seeking input specifically on the streetlight poles and fixtures. During construction, we would strive to keep the community informed, to monitor for construction fatigue as the project goes on. We'll have a project administrator on site from the district, so there'll be direct contact there. And we'll be connecting with stakeholders such as BC Transit and others, and have a dedicated web page and be putting out fact sheets as the project goes along to keep everybody informed. So focusing on the private property side of things, the project itself, installing dry storm drain pipe system or storm sewer system, is a fairly straightforward project in and of itself. There's nothing too exotic about it, I would say. The outfalls are always a bit of a challenge getting started, but after that, there'll be issues of things that we find of archaeological sites, conflicts with other utilities and such. But a lot of the challenges, how do we get the private properties to connect to the system and to get on board? I've already talked about the costliness of the system the way it is right now. Some staff have talked about this, and we've put together some incentives on separating. Some of them are to put all properties on a level playing field, so dealing with the Ys that were put on the private side, dealing with the properties that have to pump. Also looking at the no-cost laterals to the property line, possible grant to offset costs for property owners, and sewer surcharge if not separated. During the construction itself, some of the impact for property owners is it'll be significant heavy construction for sure. Frequent disruptions to traffic. We'll try and keep the active construction zones as compact as possible. Restricted access at times, and just preparing for a long-term project like this. And considering the long-term cost of not connecting to the environment and the cost of surcharge. We need to identify with each property owner the location for their lateral. So our project administrator will be doing that on a one-to-one basis. Pardon me, take a drink here. Review requirements for separation and extending the service to the lateral on the private side. So what private property owner will need to do. They'll need to contract with a plumber for the on-site works, as our contractor for the project won't be working on the private side. They must get permits as usual and consider archaeological considerations on private side as well, and working with the district project administrator to resolve issues that arise along the way. So our recommendations that were outlined in the report, and this is in the order that they were in the report. Our first recommendation was for the lateral connections was to do those at no cost to the property owner, as our consultant had already included that in project cost and was considering that as part of the works going on the streets. And that would be a savings to property owners of $2,650. Our current practice when we're doing construction on any street is that we offer property owners the ability to connect if they don't have a connector, they want to upgrade at half the standard cost. So our recommendation is to waive that, given the size of the project and what we're trying to achieve. There's the possibility of a separation and extension grant that council may wish to consider. We had a contractor estimate based on some average properties at this costing $12,400 per property to do that separation and extension to the property line. So you could look at a grant of any amount in there to assist with that. Service extension grant. So this is where The Ys were put in under district direction on the private side. There's not many of these. I think there's 15 that we know of. And so we're recommending a grant of $4,500 to take out that Y and extend it past the property line. And then that would be done by the private property owner with their contractor, and then getting it onto the public property, and then our contractor would do the connection from then to the lateral. But that would put those properties on the same footing as the other properties that later on we had them install the Y on the public side of property. A pump package grant, it's estimated that a pump package would cost between $12,000 and $14,000. We're recommending a grant of $12,000. As I mentioned earlier, for the Humber project, it's estimated that the savings from going with the shallower design was in the neighborhood of $3 million. So again, looking at the philosophy of putting all the properties on a level playing field, of giving a grant to those properties that will be required to put a pump in because they can't do it by gravity, puts them on the same footing as everybody else, and then the other separation costs they would incur. The sewer surcharge is meant to encourage people to connect in a timely manner, but also recognizing the fact that now there is an option, and there is a real cost to the district of having those properties not separated, and that we're paying to treat water that doesn't need to be treated. So we have roof areas for each house, and multiplying that by the annual rainfall total times the annual sewer rate would give us the amount of the surcharge for each property, and it averages out to $938 a year. And all of these options on this page would be available, the ones in green, for like up to 2 years past the completion of the project, and the surcharge wouldn't start till a year after the project is completed and accepted by the district. So it gives people from the time the project starts to 1 year after it completes, so the end of 2026, to do the connection. And then it would be removed when they do the connection if it happens at a later date. Along with our finance department, we just summarized what some of these would be worth in the Humber project area. So for the no-charge lateral connections, it's just over $400,000 for the 152 properties of lost incremental revenue. The grant we haven't identified, as we don't know what council's wishes would be if they wish to pursue that at all. The removal of the Y, there's 15 properties at 4,500, so just 67,500, and that would come from sewer utility surplus. And the pump packages are more expensive, and there's more of them, would come out to $600,000, and again from sewer utility surplus. And the roof runoff surcharge, we've already given an estimate of how much that would be. And the same numbers for Rutland, which is down the road, but just an idea of what the implications would be for that zone as well, as there's more properties there. Recommendation number 6 was to seek feedback on streetlights. So seek input on select designs and relay that information back to council for final decision. And that would include reaching out to the Heritage Commission, and provide, then the 7th recommendation, provide project information to inform and consultant at open house, and keep everybody informed during the duration of the project, and seek feedback and inform council when we're ready to come back with our what we learned from that, and also any other direction that you give us tonight. And then just in general, that council receives the staff report and gives staff direction on the recommendations. And obviously we're here to answer any questions from this large and complex project. So just to summarize, the project itself, we obviously have a deadline of December 2025 to complete, of getting the storm drain system in and separated and all that work. We want to encourage as many properties as possible to connect as we go. So many of the recommendations focus around the private property side of things. We anticipate coming back in July to seek project approval. If the private property side still needs more sorting out and more, council would wish more time to look at those issues further, that process can still go on, as it's still quite a few months, and it won't affect the award of the contract, because those recommendations really deal with private property owners and contractor and their costs, but it wouldn't impact the contractor itself and our going to tender and awarding. So the two don't necessarily have to be coupled. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Robertson. I appreciate that, and it's great to have those slides to go along with your report, just to basically verbally represent the report that you gave us before, so thank you for that. Okay, so the process now will be, I'll look to this table. And then we'll come back to this table for any other clarifications, etc. So I will take Councillor Patterson first.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and thank you, Director Robertson, for the report. I'll start off with, I think, the first very simple question. Could you define long-term?
Through the mayor, in what term? This project itself, or long-term, how long we think this will all last for?
Well, you used that this will be a long-term project, so I took that to be the length of the project construction period.
Director Robertson?
Yes. Well, we have a deadline of December 2025. That's what we're working towards. We won't know until we get bids and we have detailed discussions with contractor to find out if that's achievable or not. But that's the assumption we're going on. And earlier reports that I read seem to indicate that we could complete the project in a 2-year window.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. And so on the project, you did cover off in the presentation the age of the system, the risk of the system, and certainly what you've discovered about the lighting system. Could you speak to just the risk of service interruption to this portion of the district system, which I know has to be done because of it's a combined sewer system compared to the rest of the district. But from a risk standpoint, given the age of the system and what you've seen, how would it compare to, say, some of the other portions of the system throughout the rest of the district?
Director Robertson? Or Mr. Rennick?
Thank you, Chair. He was giving me the look. There are other parts of the district where the pipes are as old or older than Uplands, specifically South Oak Bay. We don't have a figure exactly for what percentage of the system is over 100 years in age, but unfortunately the Uplands is not unique. There are also 100-plus-year-old pipes in this part of town.
Thanks. And for those of you at home, that was our Deputy Director of Engineering, Mr. Rennick, speaking.
Thank you. If I may continue, the lighting system, which came up a bit later in I guess what was discovered, and certainly it makes sense, but the recommendation, well, the graphics shown, and the recommendation is to certainly engage with the public, and that's understandable, but also it's also to engage with the Heritage Commission. I am just wondering if it is not also appropriate to be referred to the the design panel, who does review of most of the architectural elements of the dwelling units that are in Uplands, and may also speak to lighting systems. I don't know that my understanding of the Uplands, certainly the heritage aspects of it are because of the park-like appearance, but I don't know that that constitutes any certain design of a lighting system. But I'm not an architect or a designer, so I would like to perhaps also seek input from the design panel.
Mr. Robertson?
Yes, I'm certainly open to whoever you would like us to seek input from. We just, once a pole and a design is chosen, then our consultants then can tell us pole spacing and things like that, because it may change a bit. But as far as what goes in, we're open to all sorts of feedback on that.
Councillor Patterson?
So thank you. The design as it is presented as of this date is that the one existing line will be used for the sanitary sewer, and the new line will be for the stormwater drainage, which again is pretty feasible given that it allows you good connections. But I'm just wondering about the sizing of the one pipe compared to what would be the sizing of a new sanitary pipe. Will the using the existing larger pipe require more flushing for a sanitary sewer line?
Director Robertson?
Through the mayor, I don't believe it would require any more maintenance than if it was to be a smaller pipe. I mean, we have, and we're working on developing currently with Public Works maintenance standards, and there would be nothing unusual, I don't believe, in the size of it as far as requiring any more maintenance.
Anything else, Councillor Patterson?
Few more questions to ask. The report does talk about encouraging residents to connect to the lines as they are installed. But just for clarity, because there's a provincial requirement to actually carry out this project, then the district does have the authority to actually require, not just encourage, but to require homeowners to connect to the system so that we're in compliance with the provincial regulation. Is that correct?
Director Robertson?
Through the mayor, what the province has directed us to do is to separate the systems out, which by putting in the new storm drain, sorry, I revert to storm drain, storm sewer, same equivalency, new system, and thereby eliminating the combined sewer overflows or the chance for those to happen. By taking the catch basins off and the properties that we know have already separated, we will reduce that risk down significantly. But the more properties that we add, the more we reduce that risk down to nothing eventually. The municipality does have the authority to make that a requirement. That was, as I understand, that was in the bylaws for a short time, but then was taken back out again. So we're taking more of an approach to encourage property owners to do the connection rather than mandating it at this point. And I don't believe that puts us afoul of the province as far as what they are requiring us to do at this point.
Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you. And Mayor, through you, just wondering if consideration has been given to situations where a property owner may own more than one property within the Uplands area. Would the intent then be to offer grants for each dwelling that is owned by an individual, or to limit the grants to one grant per a property holder, no matter how many properties they hold.
I guess the question is it on the name of the property owner or the address of the property?
Thank you.
Through the mayor, the intent at this point was to the property, so there could be multiple. And some of the grants that we're recommending are specific to the situation on those properties for the pump and for the Y extension. The overall grant is sort of a different approach, but yes, it would be per property at this point.
Thank you. And Councillor Patterson, anything else?
Yes, thank you. And just referring to our financial plan, the project was, of course, contained within the 2023 to 2027 financial plan, but the total of the project is about 25.6 million, with only about 8.5 coming from the district and the rest coming from grants, which are still to be determined as to if and how much, I suppose. And hopefully our submission will be successful in this. But there is a certain amount that has been held in reserve funds for actually a number of years. It was first held in one and then put into a different reserve fund. But if the funding is not secured prior to the start of the project, what will be the source in the district funding for financing the project to go forward?
Mr. Robertson?
I would like to defer that one to Mr. Payne, who I believe is in the ionosphere out there somewhere.
Director Payne, are you out there?
Yeah, good evening, Acting Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Through you to Councillor Patterson. That's correct. We do have some funds set aside that were originally set aside previously. So we've got basically what we had done was we had set aside gas tax funds previously, but we swapped that for infrastructure renewal funds so that we could leverage the grant requests. So we do have those reserves set aside for that. Currently, what we've got set aside for the Upland Sewer Separation Project wouldn't be able to fund the entirety of both the Rutland and Humber phases. We would have enough to fund the phase one, but not the entire 2 phases. So we would have to look at alternative funding sources for the whole project in that case.
Thank you, Director Payne. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you for that response, Director Payne. The lighting system was identified in the financial plan, but the cost was not separately identified. Is there a separate cost analysis that's been done for the lighting system, or an allowance that we're making for a lighting system?
Director Robertson.
Yes, through the mayor. In 2023 budget, we have existing capital budget that we can use for the design and the initial phase of it, because we won't get too far in 2023. And then working with Director Payne, we'll be bringing forward budget requests for the next 2 years to look after the balance of the project for the street lighting.
And I think Deputy Director Rennick has something to say as well.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add that there was a specific project identified in the financial plan, which was replacement of the streetlight kiosk, which is where the actual BC Hydro service connection comes into our system, and it has the breakers, and the current kiosk is underground and not to code and not safe. We were going to be replacing that kiosk anyways. And so that project did have a specific budget associated with it. And I believe at the time I had referenced that there was going to be this bigger project that would be coming subject to council approval. So all that council has approved so far with respect to the streetlights is replacement of the kiosk.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And when looking at the presentation, the grant funding or considerations that will be made about it is, at least when I was adding the numbers up, about 2.5 million for Humber and about 2.3 million for Rutland. So combined, that's we're at $5 million, and that's about, if I calculate right, about 20% of a 20% tax portion on our taxes at today's rate. So that would be funded from taxation to the general population in the district, and then what is proposed now would be issued in to incentivize owners, to encourage them to connect. Are those numbers about right? Is that about the right percentage of taxation?
Director Robertson or Director Payne? I'm not sure who.
I'll start out on this one. So the lateral connections, which we're recommending waiving, are already part of the project costs. So that's already been spoken for. The remaining parts for the first phase are just adding them up here, are in the neighborhood of 800,000 for Humber, which had not been anticipated to this point. And I'm not going to be fast enough to do the second one, but for the first phase, that would be the grant amounts that we're recommending, aside from the overall separation and connection, which we haven't sort of made any direct recommendations on what that amount could be. Well, it could be anything, but what you may want to do there, if anything.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
So then to offer incentives for connections to the system, we would, I imagine then it would require that it would draw down the existing reserve funds. If those amounts are not included in the financial plan, then it would either have to come out of reserve funds, or it would have to come through increased taxation for future years that are not yet in the 5-year plan. Is that correct?
Director Robertson.
Yes, through the mayor, the removal of the Y in the pump packages, Director Payne has shown as being from existing sewer utility surplus, and not knowing the exact amount, but the roof surcharge would bring funds back in. Yeah, so those ones he's identified where those are from, and I'll just defer to Director Payne if he has anything to add to that.
Director Payne.
Through the acting mayor, the proposed funding sources for the grant program would be through accumulated sewer surplus. So yes, you can consider that a reserve. That has an upper limit right now of about $1.3 million, which I don't believe would be sufficient funding for both the Humber and the Rutland phase, but certainly for the Humber phase. So any grant funding for phase 2, we'd have to find a separate funding source for, and that could be simply by incorporating a grant budget into the whole project budget and using reserves to fund that, or taxation, or one thing that's being proposed is that the stormwater surcharge could potentially fund that grant program. It's essentially a savings account for folks to fund their separation on the private side when they decide that they can do that, funded by the surcharges that they paid over the years. So there's a couple different models we can look at for, you know, the Rutland, but for the Humber phase, which is what's being primarily discussed today, we've got about $1.3 million in sewer surplus reserve that could be used for that.
Thank you, Director Payne, and Councillor Patterson. Oh,
Yeah.
did you have something else, Director Robertson?
Yes, just to add, although it's hard to quantify right now, but there also would be a savings in our CRD requisition because we would be treating, we won't be treating all that water anymore. It'll be going to the storm drain system.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I'm not certain who this question should go to, but I'm wondering why this didn't form part of the 2023 to 2027 financial plan discussions, which were only ended recently and the bylaw passed recently. So I'm just wondering why this is coming up now, and so that it's not in the financial plan. And if that being the case, then the financial plan for 2023 to 2027 will need to be amended to identify that. Or how will we identify this to the rest of the community?
Thinking we probably need to go to Director Payne for that.
Sure. Yeah, through the acting mayor. You know, I wouldn't anticipate that if we did create the grant program that we would need to access those funds until 2024. So we wouldn't need to amend the 2023 financial plan. Not that that would be a bad idea for transparency purposes. In terms of the question as to why it didn't form part of the budget deliberations, you know, the only answer I can give you, it's a fast moving project. We've got a new director on board who's leading that project. And we've really put a lot of thought and work into that project, you know, this year. And the costs in the financial plan really are primarily concerned with the cost of construction, not the potential for grants. You know, whether or not council wants to support a grant program would be speculative in the financial plan. So we would need to have the thorough conversation that we're having now in order for me to have it in the financial plan. And we weren't prepared to have this conversation any earlier. So I think that's the answer.
Thank you, Director Payne. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you for your patience, your indulgence. Acting Mayor, I will let other members of council ask a few questions now.
Thank you. I have Councillor Green next, and then Councillor Watson.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And sorry, it always feels quite far away. Thank you very much for the report through you to Mr. Robertson. I really appreciate it, and the presentation. Just a question, and I think this probably goes to Director Payne, and it has been covered briefly in the questions that were asked by Councillor Patterson, but in the 5-year financial plan, the 5-year forecast for taxes to 2027, so between 2023 and 2027, are forecast to decrease in 2025 and successively in 2026 and 2027. So they stay in the 6%, roughly 6% range. One of the risks, if this grant application was not successful, what would Plan B look like, do you think? And how would this affect the 5-year tax forecast that has been currently provided in the current financial plan? Thank you.
Director Payne.
Through the acting mayor, you know, there's several other ways we could fund this, and yes, that would have an impact on other user fees and rates. We haven't particularly modeled that, but if you look at the cost of the project, phase 1 is over $8 million. We set aside annually about $10 million, and we're scaling that up year over year what one thing that council could do is temporarily divert those reserve funds into this project. That would avoid having to adjust our taxes permanently for one project. So that would set back our reserve balances for our remaining infrastructure. But since we're continuing to escalate reserve funding annually, it just might add some time to continuing down that path. So there's ways we could manage to fund this project within the current tax increases that have been proposed. They just set us back in other respects and other objectives that we have in our financial plan.
Thank you, and Councillor Green.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, to Mr. Robertson. Mr. Robertson, these are 388 properties that are not separated. Just for clarification, through you, Mayor, to Mr. Robertson, do we know of any other properties in Oak Bay outside the Uplands that may not be separated? Is this the only sort of the Humber Rutland area? I think I took from the report the suggestion this is the last area where there is no separation. But I'm just wondering, is that true for the rest of Oak Bay? And the only reason I was a little alarmed when Mr. Rennick said that South Oak Bay, in fact, is not in great condition, and its main pipes are not in great condition. So I'm anticipating that we will come up against some similar issues in South Oak Bay. But I just wondered if there were other properties outside the 388 that have been identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Robertson.
I will defer to Mr. Rennick.
Deputy Director Rennick.
Thank you, through you, Chair. There are other locations in Oak Bay where there are properties that are not separated because there's no storm drain on their street, but it is very few. There are scattered blocks in South Oak Bay where, because the block was so rocky, storm drains were never installed. The vast, vast majority of the rest of Oak Bay has a separate storm sewer and sanitary sewer running down the road. And I would just like to clarify that I did not comment that the pipes were in poor condition. I merely commented that they were quite old.
Thank you, Deputy
Thank
Director
you.
Rennick.
And just an auxiliary question from that. Thank you, through you, Mayor. So when the time came to deal with those properties, would it be possible to have a similar grant-funded program to assist homeowners as we're proposing for the Uplands area? Thank you.
Director Robertson or Deputy Director Rennick?
Through you, Chair, that would be the prerogative of the Council of the Day when those projects came to fruition. That would certainly always be a power that the Council of the Day had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other further questions? Okay, I'll move on to Councillor Watson, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I have a sort of a miscellany of questions, some of them a little technical and some of them just about the proposed grant model. First of all, I wondered if there was any precedent historically for grants for this kind of private activity for sort of public benefit. Have we used a grant program before to support investment in public works?
And you're talking specifically
Yes.
Oak Bay?
Yes, I'm speaking specifically Oak Bay.
Director Robertson?
Through the mayor, I'm not aware that this has taken place in Oak Bay before, but a stormwater utility project I was involved with the City of Victoria, we did have incentive programs in place that had grants and ongoing incentives and one-time grants in there. Are you aware of any?
Not specifically that were provided by the District of Oak Bay. However, there are other grants that are available through, for instance, the province. If you get a heat pump, through BC Hydro, if you purchase energy efficient appliances. So there are other similar programs, just not ones that I'm aware of that the district has administered.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Yes. So I do understand the need to make this mandated investment worthwhile. And we've commented on the fact that it could be encouraged by grants or it could be required. So I guess I'm concerned about retrospective equity and future equity, because I am aware that there are homeowners in the municipality who may be on streets that have separated systems but have not connected yet. And I just wondered if, and it's kind of in line with what Councillor Green has been asking, if that had been discussed or considered at all at this point in the context of supporting homeowners in this particular neighborhood and this particular project for connection. So did that come up at all in the staff discussions?
Deputy Director Rennick.
It's a complicated question. Currently, practice has been when a property in another part of town is found to have a cross connection because they've applied for a renovation and they've done a dye test and they've failed, they have been informed, you have failed, you do not have a connection, you need to get one. And there has not been a grant or incentive program. It's simply been a responsibility, you own a home, you need to have your services properly connected. So that has been the practice in the past for other areas of town. Whereas in Uplands, there has been no practice of saying, well, you must connect to the storm drain because there is no storm drain for you to connect to.
If I can just interject for one moment, though, but really in Uplands, if you had a renovation of $100,000 or more, then you would have to put in the ability to connect to the future storm or the sewer in the future. So that's kind of like the same thing as if somebody's doing a renovation in, say, South Oak Bay, and they come across something, then they would have to also make that connection as well.
Yes, thank you for the clarification, Chair. That is correct. We were unable to find the exact date when it started, but it has been practice in Oak Bay for at least 20 years that if you're doing work in the Uplands, you are running 2 separate pipes to your property line, knowing that eventually there was going to be a storm drain for that second pipe to connect to.
And I guess my point was that it would be at the cost of the Uplands resident as it would have been the cost of the South Oak Bay resident.
That is correct, Chair.
Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you. To continue, I was interested to know if for any of these properties who will have to have some pumping to the appropriate level, if they would also need to invest in generators, given that most of the hydro service is underground. Is that an expense that would also be part of a savvy installation of pumping on private property to bring, for those properties that don't have gravity feed to the new stormwater line?
Director Robertson.
Through the mayor, depending on individual circumstances, that may be something that they would want to do. In other cases, it may be able to the sump may be able to overflow over land and in an area that would be safe to do so. So those would be individual considerations site by site.
Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, and I was also curious about the notion. Well, with respect to the proposed annual surcharge, I had a couple of questions. One was, it sounds like there's already been a bit of an inventory of roof areas, and I wanted to know how what roofs we're talking about. Are we just talking about the principal residence? Are we talking about the outbuildings as well? And if there's any other hard surface areas on those properties that does not drain to the land that could also be included in that calculation. I understand there's probably a need for something fairly simple, but I just wondered how extensive that inventory was of hard surface.
Director Robertson.
Yes, through the mayor. We decided strictly to go with the house roof area and not deal with any outbuildings or any other potential hardscape, because those would all require, from experience, those would require on-site investigations and, which one drained where, is it permeable, isn't it? So this is I think an average way of applying the same principle to each property.
Councillor
you.
Watson.
Yeah, just a couple more questions. With respect to that annual surcharge, I wonder if there'd been any consideration of waiving it in conditions where the owner has shown that they have used natural drainage and approaches to dealing with their stormwater, such as on-site containment basins that would allow for slow release into the land as opposed to releasing into the stormwater. So the proposal is that we would charge homeowners who have not connected. But if they had done other things that would reduce the need to connect, has there been any discussion about that?
Director Robertson or Deputy Director Rennick.
Thank you, Chair. The way that our public sewer bylaw is written right now, any homeowner anywhere in the district can apply for a waiver of the requirement to be connected to the storm system, provided that they give us an engineered report showing that their infiltration system, rock pit, etc., achieves the objective of managing their stormwater without causing a risk of property damage or nuisance flooding. In the event that an owner in the Uplands were to undertake such a design, I think it would be entirely reasonable for us to waive the surcharge because they wouldn't be putting clean water into the sewer.
Thank you. That's great to know. Just one final question. This is probably for Director Payne. We've had discussion about what happens if we don't get our grants, but and how we would fund this aspect of it. I wanted to understand if it would be a legitimate expense for which we could borrow if it was part of a capital works project like this. Could you actually borrow to support the grant-funded portion of this greater project?
Director Payne.
Through the mayor, the acting mayor, yes, most certainly you could borrow for this project.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's everything.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. And I'm going to move on to Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff. I have a question, and this is a bit of a difficult one to answer on the fly, so I apologize. But with the idea that the objective of the project is to essentially eliminate stormwater from the combined sewer such that it essentially eliminates the possibility of combined backup and overflow under the current design. I'm curious as to if the proposed stormwater system is put into place to intercept both road runoff and private property runoff. If theoretically the system, if nobody connected, if none of the individual properties connected their stormwater to the new stormwater conveyance facility, what sort of percentage does that amount to? So, I mean, is the road runoff the majority of the stormwater that this is expected to convey? Is it 50%? Is it a majority thereof? That's a difficult thing to estimate, I understand. But what I'm getting at here is if, for whatever reason, no individual private property or a significant portion of private properties did not connect to the system and continued to be connected to the combined system, continued to put their individual properties' stormwater down the existing combined into the sanitary system, would we still see backups? Like, how much water have we diverted such that are we still at risk of backup? And I know that nothing is you know, conditions are highly variable. Nothing's ever for sure, but what percentage or how much bulk of water are we looking at by diverting just the stormwater, which is not from individual private properties?
Deputy Director Rennick.
That is information that could be determined by looking at the total percentage of contributing areas on public property versus the total percentage of roof area. But I would caution that anything would be, number one, subject to models, and number two, any volume of water that we estimate is going to be subject to whatever Mother Nature throws at us, because you could say, well, here's what would it be in an average year, but then we get a very wet year. I would point out, however, that as Director Robertson noted in his report, there are a couple of objectives. Eliminating combined sewer overflows is one of them, but getting inflow and infiltration down to 4 times average dry weather flows is a goal for the entire capital region. We would very much struggle to achieve that goal in Humber and Rutland without the houses. Indeed, we would struggle to achieve that in any part of the capital region without some private property work. So it is a full picture. You need the catch basins, but you need the roofs too.
Sorry, I'm just going to interject. Isn't there also, we also get some other flow coming from other municipalities into our pipes as well, in that area as well, do we, or no?
The East Coast Interceptor sewer, which runs through the Uplands, does carry flows from District of Saanich. However, there's a flow meter. They are able to calculate how much comes in from Saanich. So Saanich pays for Saanich and Oak Bay pays for Oak Bay. We do the same thing further downstream where there's gauges in City of Victoria. There are a small handful of Saanich properties that are connected into our systems, but that's very small in the overall picture.
I'd forgotten that there was that ability to calculate that. Thank you. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, and that's very helpful. Thank you for that. I guess what I'm getting at here, and so I appreciate Mr. Rennick's comments because I'm sort of getting at the idea that if the target of the redesigned system is to eliminate combined outfalls, or essentially the existing situation, that's not the only target. We also have a secondary target of reducing I&I, which is not easy to do without the private property, is what I understand. I guess a follow-up question to that effect, setting aside the I&I component of it and just focusing on the CSO component of it, we've been directed by the province to achieve this measure, and this is a difficult one, but if the district provides infrastructure to which a private property owner has the option to connect, and the private property owner chooses to not exercise that option, has the district fulfilled the direction from the province? Is kind of what I'm getting at here. Or does the district, as the administrating local government, obliged by the direction of the province to provide some kind of option to private property owners? Is that what the direction from the province says?
Director Robertson.
Through the mayor, I believe that what we're proposing will meet the requirements at this point. But as Deputy Director Rennick has said, overall for the region, there are goals coming up and being probably revised as far as how many times dry weather flow is allowed into the system. And so there may be future requirements that we would have to meet, not just with the Uplands properties, but all properties in the CRD itself.
Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if I can just ask, and through you, probably to Mr. Rennick, because he was the one who brought it up, just to elaborate, because I didn't initially ask that question, but I'm interested in just elaborating a little bit on sort of the meeting the I&I targets and sort of how significant the private property piece is to that. Like, what's the mechanics of that, and what's the driving factor for needing the private property component in achieving that goal?
Deputy Director Rennick.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Through you, there are a number of sources of inflow and infiltration when you look at the literature. Cross connections, broken pipe, root intrusions. I've seen figures that suggest that up to 50% of inflow and infiltration in a sewer system comes on private property. Because if you think about it, a homeowner has a pipe that goes from their basement to the inspection chamber in the street, which, depending on what the setback is, that could be 7 meters. If it's an RS5 zone in South Oak Bay, it could be a lot longer than 7 meters. And not all homeowners are proactively having plumbers send a camera down that 100 millimeter diameter pipe to make sure that it's nice and tight and isn't leaking. And so if that homeowner has a shallow pipe that's old and hasn't been inspected in a long time right underneath their front lawn. They water their front lawn. Eventually, that water ends up in that pipe, ends up in our sanitary system. So there is a significant private property component to inflow and infiltration. With respect to the houses in the uplands, we're not talking about lawn water getting into a leaky pipe after it flows through the ground. We're talking about literally gutters, downspouts, sewer. So that is a significant amount of inflow and infiltration for those houses that are directly connected into the sanitary sewer.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton, anything else?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one further question, and this may be for Director Payne, just in terms of structure, but the topic's been raised to say that, you know, we will, ostensibly one of the positive outcomes of this project, besides some of the other ones, is to get a savings from the CRD in terms of lesser volume being sent to the sewage treatment plant, you know, a significant objective of this. So is it necessary for, well, I guess all things are possible, but would council have the option of creating a structure whereby staff could monitor the incremental decrease in that essentially bill from the CRD over the time of implementation, track that and set it aside for the purposes of offsetting some of the grants or at least some of the investiture in the project? Like, is that something that could be tracked and set aside for a specific purpose directed to this project?
I'll look to Director Payne for that answer, I think.
Yes, thank you, through the acting mayor. Yeah, I don't anticipate that it would be too involved to do that. We've got a good working relationship with our engineering department. They're able to sort of quantify rainwater that's not going in the system as a result of this, both on private and public property lands. I've got access to the data from the CRD that shows our proportion of the operating costs for the sewer treatment and how the flows have impacted that. So I think it would be quite easy to demonstrate and set up a system to just isolate those differences if we needed to.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. You're all done. Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I just want to dig a little bit further into the equity piece and just ask, it was clear to me through you, Mayor, to Director Robertson, that there weren't very many areas in Oak Bay that didn't have the public side separation, but it wasn't clear to me in what I've heard so far today how many private properties may still not be separated. Is that at all quantifiable if we're looking at setting a precedent of grants today?
Deputy Director Rennick.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We do not have a precise figure because typically if a home is just going along, doing their thing, not undertaking a renovation, we would not do a dye test to see how their services are connected. It's only when they apply for either building a new house or replacing their laterals, that's when we would do a dye test and make sure that storm's going into storm and sewer's going into sewer. If there were a desire to actually get those numbers, it's theoretically possible to do those dye tests, but that is a lot of houses, and potentially then people are incurring costs when they were not planning on undertaking any work on their property.
Thank you, Councillor Smart.
That's very helpful. Thank you. And I guess looking historically, my other question is, do we have concerns about, it wasn't clear to me again with projects that have happened potentially in the last decade, where the separation did occur on the public side. Can you clarify again, were property owners forced to make a connection at that time, or were allowed to not connect?
Deputy Director Rennick.
Through you, Chair, I am not aware of a project in the last decade where we added new storm sewer to an area that didn't have it. They were pretty much exclusively upsizing or condition replacements on existing storm sewers.
Councillor Smart.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Could you describe, through you, Acting Mayor, to staff, could you describe how the grant program will be managed?
Director Robertson.
Depending on what council does with our recommendations and the direction that we get, we would be setting up policies for the grants, the ones that are strictly grants, for waiving the lateral fee. That would be an amendment to a bylaw, and the sewer surcharge would be an amendment to a bylaw. The other grants would be policy that would be endorsed by council. We would, in administering them, again, our project administrator would be in touch with each property owner about what's available. They would not be awarded the grant until they had undertaken the work to the satisfaction of our plumbing inspector. And at that point, then that would satisfy the requirement as we see it right now. We haven't written out any of these policies yet, but that's what we've talked about in a broad framework.
Thank you. Councillor Smart.
Well, the beauty of going last is that everybody else asked my other questions, so thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple before I go to the second time speakers. And it kind of goes on something that Councillor Appleton was talking about, in that, do we know the amounts that we pay to the CRD for the? No, I guess we wouldn't. Actually, I'm answering my own question in my head right now, so I'm not even going to ask that question now. My other question was the 35 houses that already have the separation. Did you say they were in the Humber area? Yes, they were all in the Humber area. There's none in the, okay.
Sorry, just to clarify, the 35 are in the Humber. There are a number in the Rutland as well, which we've estimated. It's more, I think it's 52 or somewhere like that. But we've been focusing on our efforts on figuring out Humber, but we know there are a corresponding number in Rutland.
And I think you said that 50 houses in the Humber required this. Sorry, and that would be out of, there's 152 houses you said were in Humber, so 50 require a sump pump, and 35 are already done. So, okay. So really, for this, there's 102 minus 35 that still need the connection other than the sump pump.
That's correct. We don't know how many of the number that have already done the separation, if any of them are on pumps. I don't know that we've determined that yet.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to second time speakers. If anybody has a question, Councillor Green, and then we will be moving on to the public. So in preparation for that, if anybody is wanting to phone in, the number is 1-855-703-8985, and it's *9 to raise your hand. So just in preparation of us going to the public momentarily. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you to Mr. Robertson again, thank you for all the answers and to tough questions. And my last question, just for my own information and clarity and for the public, of the properties that have hooked up and have, as I think Acting Mayor Braithwaite was referring to them just now, they were not eligible for grants. Is that correct? They were not subsidized or funded through any grant program, so they incurred all of those costs themselves. Thank you.
Director Robertson.
Yes, through the mayor, that's correct.
Councillor Green.
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. And just for clarification, throughout the rest of the district, there is a growing trend to also put sump pumps in into dwelling units because of occurrences of flooding or backflow that have occurred. So that is becoming more predominant throughout the district, I believe, is it not?
Director Robertson.
Through the mayor, yes. A lot of the topography in Oak Bay is fairly flat, so our main don't tend to be terribly deep. So in the time I've been here, I've heard lots of requests for people wanting to get a full height basement and having to put a pump system in to be able to achieve that.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. And just one follow-up question, because we did talk about some other municipalities, certainly Saanich and City of Victoria, both larger municipalities offering grants for certain things, but both of those communities have millions in development cost charge funds as well as reserve funds. Oak Bay has very limited reserve funds. We have no money. We don't collect development cost charges, so we have no money in funds like that. For the other communities where they have large amounts of money in those development cost charge funds, are they allowed under guidelines to make granting available through monies in those funds, or to advance the work initiated by the district in order to carry out work such as this?
I think Director Payne, would you like to answer that, if you can?
Yes, absolutely. Through the acting mayor, Braithwaite, development cost charges and the use of development cost charges is it's very strictly regulated in the Local Government Act, and really development cost charges are collected in recognition that the community is growing and is going to need additional capacity. So it really funds the initial capital costs of expanding capacity. I don't really see that as being the case in Uplands. It's not, we're not proceeding with this in response to additional residents and new capacity. Although one could argue that you're creating capacity in one system because you're duplicating, you're moving it to another system. But I don't think that meets the intention of development cost charges. And furthermore, when you spend your DCCs on new infrastructure, you're necessarily creating new operating costs as well. So it's really linked to growth. So I would say, without doing additional research, that it's largely not applicable in this case.
Thank you. Any other questions from, yes, Councillor Watson?
Yes, just one final question through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Robertson. You noted in your presentation that with respect to road repairs following the work, that you intended to do kind of patch and fill work, but we're not planning to do repaving. And I just wondered, what is the plan? Given the amount of disruption to the road surface, what is the plan to make sure that we are funded for that necessary road replacement at some point in the future? And how are we allowing for that? Maybe that's a question for Mr. Payne and not for you, but I did wanted to know a little bit more about that.
Actually, I think I'll go to Deputy Director Rennick.
Thank you, Chair. The district in 2013 undertook a pavement condition index, and that pavement condition index had recommended if you spend a certain amount of money every year on your roads, you will maintain the condition as they were in 2013. At that time, that was significantly more than what the district was spending on paving. Councils have been increasing the paving amount every year and have reached that target. However, that report is now 10 years out of date, and we need a new report, we need a new target. So we have always been setting aside, or at least we've been moving in the direction of setting aside enough money every year to do the paving that we need to maintain our overall asphalt condition, with the caveat that we were not repaving roads in Uplands other than Cadbro Bay Road, which got done last year, because we knew this project was coming. So actually the Uplands roads have been getting neglected for overall repaving when they should have been getting their turn, just knowing that we weren't going to repave them and then come and dig them up to put in storm drains. So as Director Robertson noted, repaving the roads in Humber Catchment is not included in that budget, but those roads would now be eligible to get into the rotation to get repaved like every other road in Oak Bay.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm seeing no further questions from around this table. We can come back to questions here, but I would like to go to the public now. Whoever is going to be coming up to speak, if you can come up to the microphone, and I would like you to state your name and municipality of residence, and please address all comments through me, and we'll go for our first one. And if you are phoning in, once again, there is a phone number that we will probably be putting up on the screen, and it's 1-855-703-8985. And thank you, and please introduce yourself and your municipality of residence.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'm Marilyn Palmer.
If you could just pull the microphone a little bit closer to your mouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. My name is Marilyn Palmer. I'm a resident of Oak Bay, and I'm the president of the Uplands Neighborhood Association. 2 other board members are also here tonight because we have such an abiding interest in this report. And I'd also like to recognize 2 members of our association that are in attendance as well, but not yet members of the board. So those are Jackie Rudd, Nicola Comlody, Peter Vartno, and Jeff Beck. So obviously my remarks are going to be about the sewer separation report. Specifically, I wanted to comment on recommendation number 7, which says that staff be directed to undertake an engagement process with residents of Uplands neighborhood that will share information about the project and seek feedback that will be provided to council. On page 22 of the report, item G further states that such feedback will be provided to council prior to staff seeking council sign-off. The report states the aim is for the project to go to tender in Q2/Q3, so that's sort of looking like about the end of September in 4 months. So my question has 2 parts. One, what's the nature of this engagement process? Has that been discussed? Is it going to be a survey? Is it going to be a door knock? We'd like to know how this is going to be undertaken. The second part of my question is, what's the timing of this engagement process? When is it going to start? When is it going to be concluded? And that is the summary of my comments. Thank you.
You very much, Ms. Patterson. And I'll go to staff and ask their questions. If you want to, you can go back to your seat if you like.
Okay.
Yeah. If you can turn off the microphone, that would be lovely. Thank you. I guess we'll just answer these questions as we go. So the nature of engagement, Mr. Robertson, or Director Robertson, if you could let us know that.
Yes, through the mayor, we were recommending to council that we would do open house format with our communications group and be providing extensive information as we have tonight about the project and how it would go, and also based on council's feedback tonight. We're anticipating having those sessions in June. Again, just as we're able to set them up, they may go into July, but we've talked about targeting doing those in June.
Thank you so much. And I'll go back to the public. If there's anyone else who would like to come, please come up and state your name and municipality of residence, please. You do need to turn the microphone on, sorry.
Is that it? Good. Yes, Acting Mayor. I have 3 questions on 3 separate aspects.
If you could state your name first.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Jeff Buck of Oak Bay. I have 3 questions. I'm not sure I'm going to get through them in 3 minutes, but I'll...
You have more than 3 minutes. It's okay.
Okay, thank you. The first is to do with natural groundwater. I mean, we have a considerable sand aquifer that underlies much of the project area, and there's a lot of groundwater in it. And this project may actually exacerbate the impact of that groundwater on some areas where there is impact on the roads. I'm speaking as a geotechnical engineer with some experience in roads and groundwater. So specifically, you mentioned that water is being, groundwater is entering into the sewer system, and that'll be stopped. So that groundwater will remain in the ground in the vicinity of the pipes which underlies the road. And when you get down to Beach Drive, there's, the pulpits get full of, the electrical system get filled with water. So obviously the subgrade of the roads get filled with water, and that is shown in the performance of the roads. The Beach Drive was repaved some years ago, and the one area that has deteriorated since then, it lies between Ripon Road and Exeter. And this is where the ground is low, the water level is very high, and it adversely impacts the performance of the road. So I had spoken on the subject to Jack Hall in 2016, and my question is, has any is this being considered in the design of the project, and is there any drainage being proposed? Because I had some specific thoughts that I gave to Jack Hall at the time.
Actually, Mr. Buck, if you want to ask all of your questions, and then I can go to staff and we can get some answers.
Okay. Yes. Basically, these I think that it's quite feasible to when the and it would have to be done when the sewer project is done, but to put in in effect a subdrain within the backfill, so that this water, which drains down Ripon and Beach Drive and all the rest of them, to this low area, so it can be drained off, and whether it's drained back into a storm system, or whether, because it's natural groundwater, if it could be then daylighted through, say, the Loon Bay Park, onto the beach, I don't know. But it should be dealt with, because I think it is having an adverse effect on the road there. And I think it's similar impact at a low area at the bottom of Lansdowne. So my second point is rather minor, maybe, and that is, I noticed that you're going to rebuild the foundations for the lights, the street lights. I'd suggest you set them back a foot or two from where they are currently, because frequently people, when they drive back out of their driveway, their bumper hits the post before their tire hits the curb. Yeah, and thirdly, the Lansdowne is a substandard road, very substandard, I think. And it's getting worse because it is a main arterial road. It carries the buses. It carries a lot of construction traffic, big trucks, and vehicles are getting heavier. They're going to be EV vehicles now. And so is this not an opportunity, when we're doing so much work on that road, that should be a priority road to be upgraded? And is it feasible to upgrade it on this project?
Thank you so much for your questions, and I will let you sit down and we'll go to staff for some answers to some. I think probably for the Lansdowne Road, it's probably somewhere in the mix to get replaced at some point in time. Mr. Rennick, is it on any lists anywhere?
Thank you, Chair. We do not currently have a priority list for roads to be rebuilt. Lansdowne Road itself has storm drains. It's one of the few roads in Uplands that does have storm drain. And I have identified I am aware of the issues that Mr. Beck has brought up with respect to the condition of that road surface. And I can't tell you where it is in the priority list, but I can tell you that it's on the radar.
Thank you so much. And I think another question was about rebuilding the foundation of the streetlights. I'm not sure if there's an issue with how the electricity is put to those or not, or if that's something that could be considered.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Because we are replacing the wires too, because there's no conduit, really the bases don't have to go back exactly where they were. That's a conversation that we can have with the designer of, hey, what's the appropriate spacing for these? Are the existing lights too close to the curb? Are they too close to driveways? At this point in time, that's just lines on a page. So that could be changed.
Thank you. And then the first question was in regards to the the groundwater and the it pooling, I think, at Ripon and Exeter, and about the road being filled with water somewhere down there. So maybe Mr. Deputy Director Rennick.
Thank you, Chair. We will need to take that one away and follow up with the consultant as to whether the geotechnical consultant has made allowances for a subdrain or not. So I don't have an answer to that one at this time.
No worries. Thank you so much. So that one will be taken away, and we'll get an answer for that later on. Anyone else in the audience who would like to come up and speak? I'll ask for a second time. And there's no one online, it looks like, who is looking to speak. Okay, so I'll ask for a third time from the audience. No? Okay, I'm going to come back to this table then. Are there any further questions that anyone would like to ask from around the table, or any comments? I think probably first we'll have a motion to receive the report, and then we can move on from there. Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Move for receipt. And a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Smart. We don't usually discuss that, so all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you, that passes. So now I will go to comments and questions from around the table. Being none, I will then go to, Councillor Green.
Just briefly comments, and first of all, I really appreciate all the work that was done in putting together both the report and the presentation. And I guess I'm struggling with this one tonight because it's a lot of information, and it has major implications for our financial situation, for tax regime. There have been questions around equity. Those are some concerns as well. And we don't have a full council tonight. Our mayor is absent, as we know, and I'm just wondering, in my heart of hearts, I would like to see the full council here to discuss it. As well, I was not on council in 2015, 2016, when this decision was made. So I wasn't part of that original discussion or debate. I feel like I'm missing a bit of history here. I was aware of the Humber issue for a number of years, but having missed out on the actual decision making in the mid-2000s, I think we would benefit from that historical context, perhaps. So I guess, but I wanted to listen to everyone's comments, and I will do that tonight before I think of any sort of motion. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And just a reminder that we're not deciding things tonight. This basically, whatever gets discussed here tonight will then go on to a council meeting in June. Is that correct, Ms. Williams or Mr. Coates?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor.
If I could just add one comment. My other concern is about community consultation and timeliness of information sharing. I mean, this is a lot of information to process, and it is probably one of the biggest projects we will do as a council. I'm sorry, as a municipality, as a council. But well, I understand that. But I'm just anyway. I've said what I'm concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and I certainly appreciate Councillor Green's comments. I feel it's a lot to absorb. Some of it we only saw just this afternoon, as did members of the public. I'm wondering if staff perhaps could give us some idea of how they would proceed. If this doesn't come back to council until the fall, what would happen in the interim? I'd just like to have a better feel for how we're going to roll this out and introduce it to the community. In fact, it's a significant amount of money.
So I thank you for that. So I guess the question is, if it did not move to the June 12th or 10th or 12th meeting, whatever it is, council meeting, then how does that affect the project in terms of timing?
Through the mayor, we were anticipating coming back after public consultation. Is there a need for us to come back before then? No, okay. So the idea is that based on tonight is that we would undertake public consultation, but yeah, it may be difficult to do until we have direction on the recommendations. Recommendations 1, 6, and 7 deal with the project, the tender, and the project moving ahead, us being able to commit to getting the tender drawn up and moving that ahead. Items 2 to 5 are really private property subject, and our contractor wouldn't be part of any of those decisions. So it could be decoupled so that we could, I think we'd still want to engage on the overall project. However, we would have to do a subsequent engagement, I think, on the private property issues and the question of grants and all the rest of it. So that's a possibility. If we were delayed till September, I mean, we would continue to internally get the documentation ready. I mean, the project's been it's like 98% designed. I mean, the project itself isn't going to change substantially without affecting the completion date of December 2025. So if we were to not get project sign off until September or October, we'd be pushing construction, from what I've put here, another 4 months down the road potentially.
And I guess that could also increase costs as well if we're pushing something that far down the road as well, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps. The window might not be great enough that it would have a big impact, but it is a big project, large budget.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson, did you have anything else?
Yes, thank you. That's helpful to have that breakout, because I think that we know that the project, it's not really optional. I mean, we have to move this forward. This has been going on for a number of years in the district, so it's really how that is framed out. So then on 1, 6, and 7, I guess the real issues in my mind are around the financial management of how we go about doing this. And so we have applied for grants, and hopefully some of that will come through. And if it came through as what is set out in the financial plan, we won't have any problem. We'll just go full speed ahead. But I think that pending further information to clarify that, I would like to see an overview of the finances and just options that council might have to manage the funding of the project, and a timeline schedule of when those key decisions would need to be made for securing funding to ensure that it could move forward in a feasible way, so that the project would move ahead. And so I'd like to know how that would fit into, again, this process, and that's particularly with respect to 1, 6, and 7, as Mr. Robertson pointed out. Those are the key things that need to be accomplished in order to not delay further tendering of the project.
And I guess from that might come a question as well, as the grants that we've applied for, do any of them run out before, if we delayed up the project, would any of them, would it affect the dates of any of them to be given out?
Through the mayor, the grants that we've applied for run past our 2025 completion date. I believe it's to 2027.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just some comment, and maybe there'll be a question that falls out of this, but in looking at this, well thought through proposal. It's a certain approach, but I do understand what's being requested here. And what I see is a mostly carrots approach with almost no sticks in the face of something that we are required to do by the provincial government, and we would probably want to do anyway for good environmental practice, even if we were being told to do it by the province. So I really, in looking at what we have in front of us, I really have some serious equity concerns, both actual equity and perceived equity in the community, if we were to move forward with the recommendations as presented. Both actual equity for individuals in the uplands who have already done the work that that the proposals are we would incent, and also more broadly in the whole community for anybody who still has not connected their private property to existing stormwater lines. So when we talk about a consultation, I have my own sense is that consultation probably needs to be broader than just the folks in the uplands, because the whole community is affected by this. So I guess I do have a follow-up question then to Mr. Robertson, because you've been talking about a June sort of rollout. What would that involve if it were redesigned to be something a bit bigger and more comprehensive in terms of that community discussion than what perhaps you were thinking of when you talked about that this evening? So that's a question.
Thanks. And Director Robertson.
Through the mayor, I'm not sure how successful consultation over July and August would be. So it may see us moving it off to September.
And if I can just add in there, at the public consultation, I mean, we don't have any limit on who would come to our public consultation, so it would actually be, and what happened in the past was it wasn't just Uplands residents that came to our public consultation, it was the wider community that came to our public consultation. So there's never any limit, I don't believe, on that, and I think Deputy Director Rennick would like to also add something.
Yes, I have a couple of points that I would like to add on that, if I may. The Superintendent of Public Works, Dave Brozick, and I spoke today. He was acting director at the time that engagement occurred, and he told me that there were a number of open houses at Monterey Center, at the church, at the yacht club, at the high school. So I believe there was broad consultation. I would point out that in the strategic planning process, there was a document given to this council about initiate the project that had a certain budget and a certain number of comms hours. And if we were to go to a broader communications beyond what was authorized at that time, there would be implications to go back to this council, because you authorize some communication. It's your prerogative to ask for more, but we would need to look at how that fits into our work plan.
Anything else, Councillor Watson? Okay, thank you. I'll move on to Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess my observation at this stage of the game is such that essentially we have two classes of recommendations here. Well, actually three, but essentially two classes of recommendations in my mind. Sort of recommendation number 1 and recommendation number 3 fall to things that are essentially operating on, that deal with either public land, district land, or previous district direction to landowners. So in my mind, I think that recommendations number 1, which is already budgeted for and deals with lateral connections, is potentially supportable. Recommendation number 3 deals with essentially clarifying or rectifying a situation that the district itself directed people to do in the past. So that seems supportable to me. So then recommendations number 2 and 4 obviously deal directly with private land and whether or not the district will provide a grant or essentially subsidize works on public land. And I have a pretty significant problem with this, not because I don't think that it's necessary, but as has been pointed out a number of times through this conversation, it's very difficult for me to support a grant program for a private property and that being put in place when I know that other private properties who have to rectify a similar situation elsewhere in the district could not call on a grant. And of course, the district could change that and could provide for that. But at this stage of the game, both anybody who discovers an issue, as staff have described with their existing situation that they need to correct, as identified through a dye test, is on the hook for that cost. Any of the people who have already done work in Uplands over the past 2 decades that have, that have triggered the need for this upgrade have done so at their own cost. So it's a bit of a challenge because there would be people in the Uplands who might say, if I had just waited a couple of years, I could have gotten a significant grant to do that work where instead I did it myself. So I think that that's something I'm not saying that means dismiss a grant out of hand, but I think that that's a significant modifying factor for me when I think about that particular piece. So in my mind, the amount of the grant is for both the pump and the separation piece, as in 2 and 4, relates to the overall cost of the project. And there's a significant monetary hit to the district if that's taken up in any kind of significant way. So then the offset to that, in my mind, comes from cost recovery versus via surcharge, as laid out in recommendation number 5, and then also potentially what we can project as far as decreased flows as clocked by the CRD going to the sewage treatment plant. So I think I would be more comfortable with deferring the decision on recommendations 2 and 4 as far as grant amounts until we could potentially see a more in-depth analysis of the monetary implications of like what would recommendation number 5 potentially generate for us in terms of a cost offset. What could we expect as far as some projections from CRD? So that could potentially be a question through you, Madam Chair, to staff. I'm not sure whether that's realistic. I'd be happy to make a motion to that effect. Depending, I will let council discuss. But I'm just wondering whether or not that's something that staff feel might be feasible before the next phase of this project.
I'll look to Director Robertson.
Through the mayor, as far as recommendation 5 goes, we do have a calculation done on all the properties. I don't happen to have it with me, but we have done that for all properties, so we know what that would. That's how we came up with the average and the high and low. So we know what that would be. And we know today we know how many properties are separated that wouldn't apply for. We don't know. The X factor is how many people get on board before we are at a place where the surcharge would come in place. So what would be the revenue remaining that we would be generating by that? On recommendation 4, in this particular circumstance for the pump, it is a bit of a oddity, but because the design decision was made to put the main at the elevation it was, we've put those properties in this position, and that's the rationale for that one, not for any other reason.
Actually, I'm just going to jump in for a moment here. So yeah, I'm glad that you said that because I'm sitting there looking at that one and I'm thinking, well, it says that they can't attain a gravity connection because we're choosing as a district not to give them a gravity connection. If we were choosing as a district to give them a gravity connection, I think you said something, it was either $3 million extra in Humber or $10 million overall for the whole project. So in my head, where I go with this is that I go, well, we're saving $3 million by not doing the gravity connection. So if we need to then turn around and give how many houses? 50 houses we think might have to do a sump pump. 50 times 12 is what, $600,000? $600,000 as opposed to $3 million. That's where my head kind of goes as far as that goes. I go, it's actually saving the district $2.4 million basically if we give. If we allow for this grant to go through for $12,000 for those 50 houses. So that's kind of, in my head, Councillor Upton, that's kind of how I'm looking at that. So I could be wrong, but I think my math's correct there. But anything else for, no? Okay. Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Yeah, through you, Mayor, I had the same realization about number 4, and I think it's going to be, there's going to be a sense of I didn't get to choose this situation. So I had the same feelings on the justification for number 4. And as much as I'm concerned about the equity piece for number 2, I also did feel a slight justification for considering a grant. And the reason being is that if we do go ahead with recommendation number 5, none of those residents have chosen this timing for this to happen. And we don't know the circumstances of everybody's life right now. And I think that it is a unique situation where all of a sudden they're potentially going to have a significant extra fee to pay if they don't go ahead with this work. So I do think that there is some justification to consider a small grant for number 2, but I would want to do it based on the fact that other projects going forward would have the same opportunity.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so we've already looked at, we've already received the report, so I would now look at recommendation number 2, if anyone is feeling that they, Councillor Appleton. Oh, sorry. Recommendation number 1, I just did the receipt, that's correct. Looking at recommendation number 1, and I think that if someone would like to put that forward, perhaps if you can read it for the record, that would be good.
Acting Mayor, I would move that recommendation number 1, the public sewer bylaw number 3891, be amended to permit lateral connections to properties in the Humber and Rutland project areas to be installed as part of the Uplands sewer separation project at no cost to property owners.
Councillor Smart, thank you. Okay, would you like to motivate it all, Councillor Appleton?
Just further to my earlier comment, I think it's reasonable and cost effective. This has already been considered within the project scope, as staff have mentioned, and I think it's eminently reasonable to do this at the same time as the project overall. I don't know how it would make sense to omit this piece, and I think it is a reasonable incentive or a reasonable benefit to afford to private property owners to have that work done as per the district.
Thank you. And Councillor Smart, did you want to add anything as the seconder?
Work that needs to be moved ahead. I don't really have a lot of content to add other than
Okay,
I think it's a great
no
idea.
worries. Anybody else? Councillor Watson.
I thought that Councillor Appleton's characterization of the recommendations and how some could be supported and maybe others needed further discussion, it did make sense to me, but I did wonder to what extent homeowners who have been part of many years of discussion around the design of this project, if this is something that they would always have been expecting. I understand it's included in the budget for the project, so in some ways that makes it easier, but I just wondered about what the public's, the affected homeowners, the affected property owners, if this has always been something in mind that they were expecting would be part of of the deal when this separation came to their neighborhood. So
I'm not really sure who could answer that question. Perhaps Deputy Director Rennick.
Thank you, Chair. It's a difficult question to answer, to be quite honest. Those owners always would have known that there would have to come a lateral to their property line. Whether they would have to pay to get it all the way to their property line, it's hard to say. It's also worth pointing out that in 2016, the cost of getting a new lateral installed to their property line would not have been $2,600. It would have been about $1,500. So costs increase, things change. Decisions that were made 7 years ago might not necessarily be relevant or timely at this point in time.
Councillor Green.
I really appreciate the question. I appreciate all the comments around the table. That's exactly my concern, that decisions that were made at the table in 2015-16, and I thank you for that, through you, Mayor, to Mr. Rennick. I appreciate that honesty. Is this a surprise to the public? Because if it is, it's a difficult one. I don't know if I can support it tonight without further discussion, without some form of indicators, public indicators that people are not surprised by this or taken aback by this. And I just don't know that. So thank you.
Councillor Appleton, did you have something else to say or no? Yeah, okay, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would just add to that, and I could appreciate that comment. I would just add that in essence, I see this as, this is essentially, when we're talking about most these types of projects in the district, we're talking about replacement of existing, underperforming infrastructure. In this particular case, this is novel district infrastructure. This is a bit of a unique situation because the stormwater pipe is novel. The laterals to the individual properties are novel. So I'm considering it as part of novel district infrastructure on district property.
Thank you for that, Councillor Appleton. Okay, if I don't see any further comments, so I'm going to call the question on recommendation number 1. All in favor? And those opposed? Councillor Green and Patterson opposed. That carries. Okay, I will look now to recommendation number 2. It is up on the screen right now. Would anyone like to put recommendation number 2 forward? Okay, I don't see anyone wanting to put recommendation number 2 forward, so I'm assuming I can just move on to recommendation number 3. I'm assuming that recommendation number 2 then would, well, okay, I'm just going to leave that alone for a second. Recommendation number 3. Councillor Watson, you'd like to put recommendation number 3 forward? You don't have to read it, it's up on the screen. Okay. Seconded by Councillor Appleton. Any discussion? No? Okay, then I'm going to call the question on recommendation number 3. All in favor? Any opposed? It carries unanimously. Thank you. Recommendation number 4. Would anyone like to put that one forward? And that is the one-time grant in the amount of $12,000. Councillor Smart, you'd like to make that motion? Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to put forward recommendation number 4 as written.
Is there a seconder? I'm allowed to second as chair. I will second as chair. For discussion? Councillor Smart, would you like to motivate in any way?
Yeah, I see that a design was chosen that put some residents in a situation that they did not choose. And so I do feel that it's because of the significant cost savings that the district is incurring, that some of those savings could be passed on to the residents that have to now deal with a pump situation, and even having the costs covered, now have to deal with having a pump, which is not a desirable situation.
Thank you, and I would reiterate those comments. Anybody else? Councillor Appleton.
Oh, no, thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the comments on this. I appreciate your comments. I think it's a completely reasonable argument, rationale, everything tracks. I don't disagree with any of that at all. My issue is actually a larger one of, I guess, and this is something that council will have to wrangle with on a number of different occasions in a number of different contexts. But my issue actually falls to stormwater management in the district overall, which is that there are sections, significant sections of the district that are recognized as sort of underperforming as far as stormwater because they were not because they were not designed for the flows that they're currently having to carry. And we're looking at atmospheric events and the effects of climate change that overtax our stormwater system, and we have a kind of aged system that struggles to keep up as it is. So as has been noted through this discussion, there are plenty of Oak Bay homeowners who are electing to put in a pump just for extra peace of mind and just for extra security, given the way that the rainfall events are happening right now, and I have neighbors who have done it. So I have difficulty, indeed, this is affected by the design that was chosen by the district. But I think it would be reasonable for somebody to approach the district. Then if this were the decision taken, then another resident could reasonably approach the district and say, I feel that the infrastructure in the district is generally underperforming as far as stormwater conveyance, and I feel I need a pump to protect my property. Therefore, I also feel like I should be able to access a grant, which is a reasonable argument for somebody to make. So it does have, there is a clear precedent for me on this item right now. I don't think there's it excludes the possibility of revisiting it, but I need to see it more holistically as far as how we deal with stormwater overall in the district, and potentially looking at some alternative measures as well. Folks in Uplands, as has been mentioned, are dealing with larger properties that may have more opportunity, as Mr. Rennick described, to create an alternative structure to manage stormwater. Whereas some many properties in other parts of the district don't have the area to be able to do that. So that's a disproportionate need. Then you may have an alternative method on your property. So, not that I don't think that the rationale is completely sound, and that the rationale, it is driven by the design chosen, absolutely. But I can't support this recommendation at this time until we have a bit of a larger discussion about how we deal with stormwater management in the district, which is something we've kind of danced around or talked around a lot, but is going to come home to roost here in the upcoming couple of years. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
And thank you, Councillor Appleton. I appreciate those comments. I hearken back to the Bowker flooding in 2011, which was absolutely major, and I went down to see the property damage on Bowker. It was horrible. I hearken back to the McNeil flooding more recently. I think within the last term that there was major flooding of homes at the bottom of McNeil and Transit area, I believe. So I mean, I totally agree. I think that we have a larger problem, and it's unfortunate, but I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Sir Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. And yes, I also appreciate the comments by Councillor Appleton and Councillor Green. And although the Humber pumping costs are $600,000, the Rutland ones I noticed are $1.56 million. And so that's more substantial just in the Uplands area. As Councillor Appleton relayed, it's stormwater in the district really that we need to consider, because so many homes in the district. On my street, I know that simply putting layers upon layers on topping on the street have created a circumstance too, so that most of the neighborhood had to put in sump pumps. And so I would certainly need to have conversations with the broader neighborhood, I think, not just the residents of Uplands, and understand with more clarity what the district can and will perhaps consider undertaking for stormwater management in the district as a whole. Because it's not just an Uplands area. I would also add that I certainly sat in on a lot of the open houses the last time this was discussed, and it was not so much a decision made by council at that time to not have a gravity-fed system, as it was the residents of Uplands understanding the more intensive work that would be required to, in fact, install a gravity feed system, and some of the encroachments on public land by private installations that have occurred over the year that would all be affected. And so the public engagements at that time were basically focused on 6 options, and it was through many public engagements that the choice was narrowed down to being something that was considered reasonable to the residents of Uplands and to the rest of the community. So it wasn't so much that the council of that day just decided, because of the lower price tag, that they were going to choose this option. They didn't, in fact, choose the lowest cost option. They chose the one that was most feasible to get the work done.
Yeah, I think the least invasive was probably the choice that was made. I would say that if this does not go forward, this is recommendation number 4, that I would then hope that we would, as a council, have these discussions around this very quickly, because to me, when we go out to the public, to the Uplands people and to the rest of the community, they're going to want to know what that answer is, because this is going to be top of mind for them. So I think that we need to make a decision on this really quickly. So if it doesn't go forward, then I hope that we can revisit this sooner rather than later. So, okay, on that, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor and those opposed. Councillor Patterson, Green, Watson, and Appleton opposed, so that motion is defeated. I will look now to recommendation number 5, which is up on the screen. Yes, Councillor Appleton, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with the concept in principle. Is it useful for staff to have this just move forward at this stage of the game so that they can conduct analysis? Is that sort of how I read it?
I think that would be exactly
I see
it.
nodding heads, and then I would be pleased to move recommendation 5 as written.
Seconded by Councillor Green. Any discussion? All those in favor? That carries unanimously. And I will look now to recommendation number 6, which is that staff be directed to seek input from Uplands property owners, etc., as written on the screen. Councillor Appleton, you're moving that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, moved as written.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Smart. Any discussion? Or would you like to motivate at all, Councillor Appleton, or you're good? Councillor Patterson?
I would propose amending this that staff be directed to seek input from the Uplands property owners, the Heritage Commission, and the design panel.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that amendment? Yeah, Councillor Appleton. So speaking to the amendment, anyone? I'll just call the question on the amendment. All in favor? That's none opposed. That carries. And now to the main motion. Any other further discussion? Nope. Okay, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. And recommendation number 7.
Move recommendation 7 as written.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Smart, thank you. Do you need to motivate at all, Councillor Appleton? No. All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Watson.
I would like to move an amendment to recommendation 7, that staff be directed to undertake an engagement process with residents of the Uplands neighbourhood and the community more generally to share information about the project and seek feedback.
Perhaps we can just change it to an engagement process with the residents.
Okay.
And just take out the other words. Would that be, is that okay with staff? That's, yeah. Okay, so then it would just read that that staff be directed to undertake an engagement process with the residents that will share information about the project and seek feedback that will be provided to council. Is that okay? So that is an amendment, and that seconded by Councillor Smart. Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, I'll call the question on the amendment. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And now to the main motion. Any discussion on the main motion? No, seeing none, I will call the question on the main motion. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously also. I will now go to Councillor Appleton, who looks like he wants to put his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering the procedure for, well, I guess we have new business coming up here, so I'm just wondering, get some more information on some of the things that were discussed tonight. I'm not sure whether staff's prepared for that or not, or whether it should be submitted.
I think we could do a motion arising, yes.
Thank you. Well, then, just further to some of the discussions, I would make the motion, further to this, what we've discussed, I would make the motion that staff be directed to prepare further detail on cost recovery via surcharge and analysis of potential cost savings from reduced flows as monitored by CRD.
Thank you. I know Mr. Coates, Director Coates has got that up there. You got half of it. Perhaps you can say it one more time so we can catch up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. That staff be directed to provide further detail on cost recovery via surcharge and analysis of potential cost savings from reduced sewage flows as monitored by CRD.
As monitored by CRD. Okay. Conveyed it all, Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm not trying to create a bunch of additional work here for staff, but what I'm hearing is that potentially a good portion of this information already exists. So I think it would be useful for us to be able to assess, I guess, if this is a cost benefit or if there's a cost and potential recovery equation involved with this project. It would be nice to get a sense of, we have a very good sense through this comprehensive report of what the cost per individual property would be, the unit costs. What I'm looking at here is an analysis of, again, potential cost recovery through the analysis of roof areas that Mr. Robertson's referred to, and potentially what we might project as far as a reduction in charge from the CRD at the sewage treatment plant. So these are things that I guess these are costs that are recoverable through the implementation of the project, that it would be nice to be able to balance that against the expenses column, I guess, that's laid out in this report. So, but I'm happy to hear commentary from staff as to how feasible it might be or whether or not it needs an impact analysis.
Any comment from staff? Deputy Director Rennick.
Thank you, Chair. I looked like a deer in the headlights for a second there. There are a lot of potential variables. When every house in the Uplands, we would have to look at what percentage of houses have initiated the separation activities. If every house in the Uplands, bar those ones who have already done the work in the last 20 years, starts being charged for their roof area, that means that the total number of units of sanitary sewer fee that the district is collecting to pay the CRD requisition goes up, which means the rate per unit goes down. So every ratepayer in the district pays a lower CRD rate, with the exception of those in the Uplands who pay more. Over time, that balance is going to shift because there's going to be less roof area, but our total amount of flow goes down, so our requisition goes down. So hopefully everybody's CRD rate goes down and stays down. But then there's the complicating factor of the CRD requisition goes up every year due to inflation. So I just started rambling. It's not impossible, but we will need to put some definitions, some error bars, and some assumptions around this analysis.
Thank you for that, Mr. Rennick. Okay, so I'm going to call the question on that motion arising. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. And was there any motion in regards to recommendation number 4 that you were thinking of, or no? At this time, okay. Anybody else have any other motions arising? Okay. Business. Any new business? Seeing none, then I would look for a motion for adjournment. Councillor Green, Councillor Appleton seconds. All in favor? Thank you very much. All that passes. Thank you to everybody. Thanks to staff. Thanks, Mr. Robertson and Mr. Rennick, for sitting in the hot seat tonight. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone.